everybody. Welcome to another episode of What You Doing Podcast, the interview podcast where I talk to cool people about the amazing stuff that they're working on. My name is Matt, and I got a little bit of a special episode for you this week. I believe I teased it in a previous episode, but this time I'm sitting down with Graham Gentz to talk about his experiences and thoughts running SCIRE, the Cyber+PNK megagame at Gen Con. This is exactly the sort of interview I'm excited to do on the podcast, talking to somebody about their weird, cool idea, what they thought about it, how they thought it went, and how it might go in the future. This is actually one of two episodes on mega games I recorded, and the second one should be coming out soonish. But that's then. This is now. Let's get to the interview. I'm like halfway through the Autumn Darkly AP that No Man and Cameron and them did.
Yeah.
That was so good. That was one of those things, like, I watched the whole first video and I was like, what game is this? What is happening? What's actually happening right now?
Yeah, I've been really lucky, and maybe I should save it for the pod. But that mostly they're one shots, and whenever I met them 2 Gen Cons ago, it grew in the making, and so it became this multi-part messing with the structure thing, and they were like, is that okay? I'm like, of course it's okay. Like, do what you want to do. So no spoilers, but they continue to mess with the structure in a really interesting way all the way to the end.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig into it. And hey, so that we can jump into it, let's just officially, hi everybody, welcome to What You Doing Podcast, the cool interview podcast where I talk to cool people about the amazing stuff they're doing. I put cool in there twice. Sue me. The show's cool.
It's
the people
the
are cool. Yeah. I make a cool show and the people on it are cool. Flag. I'm planting it.
There we go.
Today I'm talking to Graham Gentz. Graham, say hi.
Hi everybody. I'm Graham Gentz. I use he and they pronouns. I'm a facilitator, game designer, and occasionally a puppet. I'm also the playing culture lead at MythWorks, a publisher of comic books and role-playing games such as The Wild Sea and Slug Blaster Kickflip over a Quantum Centipede.
Hell yeah. We had Emmanuel and Ray on not that long ago, and that was such an exciting episode for me because I love Cyber+PNK, and so having them on was like, in the way that every episode is exciting, was one of the first episodes that I was like, holy shit, this is cool. So yeah, we're here to talk about ostensibly Graham oversaw, facilitated, ran the SCIRE mega game at Gen Con. And I reached out to Graham. I saw him talking about it because I love mega games. Mega games are such a neat, sort of weird mutation shift of TTRPG board game and like LARP mechanics. They're such an interesting creature in the game space, and I don't feel like people do enough of them. I feel like the ones that you see are so specifically built in ways that are cool, but you don't see a lot that are like evolved out of something else. They usually have very bespoke rules. They have very bespoke circumstances and rules. A different word for rules that makes me sound smart. I don't know.
Mechanics, stuff you do.
You know what it was? Procedures. Procedures was the word I wanted. Procedures.
That is a great word. I would say it's a very cool word.
But so it's interesting to see. And this is, hey, spoilers to people listening. This is going to be the first of a couple interviews you're going to hear from people that did mega games at Gen Con, because when you're cued into the TTRPG scene, sometimes you get to talk to a lot of people. But Graham, let's kick off first. What was sort of the inspiration behind doing this mega game, like, at all?
Sure. So there's a lot of history with it, and in terms of my involvement as well. The mega game scene came in the US, specifically came out of a single video done by Shut Up and Sit Down, of which Quinn's Quest just now kind of appeared, and all the people who weren't board game people suddenly, like, Quinn is hitting again in terms of the RPG people, and it's this whole new thing. So many years ago, in the pre-Pando years, they did this thing in England, which was called Watch the Skies, and they had a big video of it, and then they did it the next year, and they did it again, and myself and a bunch of people all simultaneously in the US saw that video and said, I want to go to there. And so when Shut Up and Sit Down started doing their own conventions, Shucks in Vancouver, I started going out the first few years, right up until 2020 or so. And I ran a lot of these things and became involved in the Megagame Coalition because there's such large productions that you need a lot of support, a lot of staff. And so as a result, like this past Gen Con, the Megagame Coalition ran 19 different mega games. And that doesn't include SCIRE, and it doesn't include any of the RPG ones, which are totally kind of in their own offshoot, which comes directly into my answer to your question, where did this come from? The last few years have seen this sudden emergence of these RPG mega games. And really, they're largely a lot of people playing a single RPG, largely in parallel play with very small connective tissue. Um, uh, Most recently, there was the large sort of battle royal that was done of a Mothership, which happened to be the exact same time as SCIRE. And so it felt like something that I had a lot of experience with, and I'm continuing to collaborate with Mythworks. So what are we going to do? And so with Ray Chow and myself, we created the idea of, okay, it's going to be an arcology. And then I ended up writing the rules and implementing it with in mind that it's sort of in three big acts, and it seems like everyone is just playing CBR plus PNK, but then the second act, more mechanics and more kind of universality and connective tissue appear. And then by the third act, everything is kind of full blown. And so for me, it's this sort of transition from a more familiar state and not overwhelming people. And that being different from most of the other board game, large board game based mega games that I've run or been part of. Since they really are just straddling a line and then they throw you into the deep end. But I've been thinking about them a lot. And so this is taking a lot of different lessons and trying to think, okay, this is how I think we could do it and really bring it out into a new group and a new way to do it.
Yeah, and that was my excitement around seeing this was, like I mentioned, mega games are usually, very board game based, like you said, very simple, like roll this d6, roll 2d6, this, measures whatever and then compares. But using TTRPG mechanics is such an interesting idea, especially ones that are more lighter in the moment, like CBR plus PNK and Mothership, like things that are you get a lot of mileage out of your dice rolls. When you were writing SCIRE, were you concerned about sort of information overload going into the second act when it became this whole, this massive interactive thing?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of my major concerns about why I structured it in three acts. You all start. There's essentially 30 players, and they're split into 6 teams, but 5 are at tables, and 1 team is kind of free floating. And each of those tables represent a district of SCIRE, of this arcology, and each table has a GM. But sort of once they get to kind of a GM facilitated moment, they realize they could open a passageway to another fixed district. And what I don't tell them is that as soon as one person goes through it, it kind of gets locked down again. And so we have this initial sort of trading. And once, either with mechanics they invent themselves, because one of the great things about mega games, in my opinion, is having the flexibility for players to be inventive, create rules, break rules. This is kind of really when people start to get galaxy brained in the mega game kind of space as a player. And I know it's the secret sauce, so I explicitly wanted that to be happening. And the real overload didn't occur until that last third. Mega games can last between 6 and 8 hours, which I always thought was like pretty excessive. And at that point, you only ever know 5% or less of what's going on, particularly if you have a very large player count, like 60 to 100 or more. You are on a team, though. Like, this is kind of one of the defining features of most mecha games, even the kind of more traditional hybridy ones. The reason you're able to get over this overload is because you're on a fixed team with about 5 or 6 people, and you all have asymmetrical roles. So this is how you, as I've said before, trick board gamers into LARPing. You're not playing a person with a name. I am the head of military of Brazil, and you're the prime minister, and our other friend is the head of science, and so you are incidentally role playing without being asked to do so, because all of a sudden you're in an ecosystem where everything is kind of happening at once. But here, I explicitly wanted to be a role playing game forward, but still have plenty of the interactivity in the ecosystem that I think really defines mecha games in a really exciting way. So the idea was to slowly build complexity and add the interactivity as they went, and it to be as 100% player driven as possible. A lot of these games, a lot of these other things, and this kind of goes to my impulses as a game runner, a facilitator in a more traditional sense. You create problems, but you don't have solutions, and you need to not have an end state in mind. And so as a result, I had all these motivations that I gave players beforehand, and I had complications and ideas, but I didn't have a fixed plot. I didn't have a fixed destination because I knew it was going to occur from players. Everybody thought I was crazy. What do you mean you don't have a story? Well, it happened, and it can't not happen because you have these players playing into it. Which also, like Under the Autumn Strangely, is also my bet. I'm betting on players. I believe and trust in players, and I know that they're going to create as they go without even being asked to do it.
Yeah, and that was the thing that grabbed me with using TTRPG rules is I think TTRPG players are a little more keyed into the idea just due to experience of I'm in a place, right? Okay, I'm a character, I'm in a place. Just start poking at stuff. Just start touching things. What is this? Is this a door? Open the door. Is this a, in a little bit more interactive of a sense than people coming from board games, which I think, like you said, works really well for more traditional mega games because from everything that I've seen, I remember watching the Watch the Skies video as well. I remember when it came out. Like I think it's come up 2 separate times already in the history of the podcast. It definitely felt like people playing for half of the groups, people playing board games next to each other. And then, okay, that updates this big board that someone else is playing a board game at in a way that like, if I come off sounding derisive about it, that's not my intention because I think that's what everybody's
it's cool
buying
to be
into.
Derisive. It's okay. Go right ahead.
Well, sometimes my word choice comes off a little mean and I don't mean it that way. What I mean is like everybody that's playing that knows what it is and is buying into it, and that's part of like the idea. And so when you bring TTRPGs as the basis for that, I think going into it and just like we're gonna have a building, we're gonna have some weirdos walking around. I don't know what's gonna happen. Like makes a lot of sense because you're letting 30 players loose in a building with some weirdos. You could write a story. That's great. It's not gonna happen. Anybody with any amount of experience knows. It's just, yeah, they'll fight, whatever. They're going to do whatever someone's going to build a rocket. Someone's going to try to dig a hole straight down. And that, you can't keep those number of players corralled like that.
It's less that the story won't happen if I mandate it. I think it will be weaker as a result. It's leading into the current instead of away from it. It's finding the things that are naturally occurring and saying, this is the game, this is the alchemy, that spark that makes all of this possible. And also being able to support these player-driven goals, because that's also how you get buy-in. We have some really excellent long-form videos taken by Ray, who is responsible for the kernel of SCIRE, for the big kind of broad strokes of what we were doing, as well as like helping with tech and support on the day of. Because one thing that all these mega games lack is that nobody ever really like was able to communicate them. You've already talked about how they're kind of in their own little niche, and I think they are, and part of that is because they don't really communicate what they are very well, and they're also hard to describe. That's part of the reason why the Shut Up Sit Down video is patient zero for this whole American movement, because it did a really good job of explaining the feeling of it. And it's okay to be derisive because all of these, the design part is these asymmetrical games. And the idea that each player on your team is doing these different tasks is supposed to inform the larger ecosystem. And so the more moving parts you have, the more immersion things start occurring. And instead of trying to struggle against the flow and be like, oh, okay, we got to make sure we're listening to the players, but also my plot with whales is important for some reason. It's doubly the task of trying to get the players to care about your story versus creating these opportunities, having active listening and complicating those things. One of these long videos has players like shouting in character about like the dangers and the stuff, which it basically all the mega games I ever did never really happened. It was always bubbling under the surface. But because the whole goal was to lean into the way the players were interacting, and the GMs I had locked down at their tables. So when you start moving around, they're responsible for the narrative reality happening. So the players become the ones who are moving around, and you're able to kind of have that be the verisimilitude of the whole thing, and then end in the proper time in a clean 4 hours.
Yeah, that was going to be my next thing, was what sort of time basis was this? And 4 hours I think is incredibly tight gaming. Like that sounds like an absolute madhouse of 4 hours.
Well, because it was so carefully paced, it didn't actually get insane until like that last third, which thankfully is what I wanted. I didn't want it to be exhausting. Watch the Skies, 8 hours has no real pacing. It's exhausting from minute 0 all the way to the end. And also because traditional mecha games are also timed rounds, there's usually a big clock that every 45 minutes is going to go off. People are very aware of that time, and so there's a thing called last turn madness, which is board game mega game designers talk about all the time. You give characters all these options, and the easiest one is it's in Watch the Skies. Everyone has nukes. We haven't used our nukes, and there's this breaking of reality where everybody says "fuck it," and everyone nukes everyone, or they, the one country decided to have a giant mech, and all of a sudden the mech is fighting all these different things. And so I wasn't interested in that. However, again, it's the running away versus going forward problem. Being able to have players be forming their own goals as they went in, beginning, middle, and end, meant that when these more universal things, these global events and kind of things that are happening, like an entire district or an area got completely blown up by one of the teams, and people are like, oh my God, things are happening. And so as a result, the ecosystem feels like it's doing its job. But because it's a role-playing game at its core with all these other systems that I've kind of layered on top, people don't lose sight of their motivation, and they have the people on the team, and the GMs were incredible in terms of what I wanted, which is making sure the hard framing of the sensory information and the locations always felt connected to. So there was never that like unplug of what do I do or what's happening, because there was always something that they could be interacting about and thinking about.
How much did you consider when you were working on it? How much did you consider with like how much design thought did you put into the interactivity between tables and the sort of I'll put the TikTok videos or if they're on YouTube or whatever, I'll link those in the show notes for people. Definitely check them out. They're amazing. It's like Graham says, part of why that Watch the Skies video was so amazing was being able to see everything happening and actually get some sort of, documentation and see everything moving. It grabs you in a way that just hearing about it kind of doesn't. Once you see what's happening, you see the big picture, you see, the amount of people that are doing things and all of this. So definitely go watch those. I lost my train. When you were working on the design, what sort of balance were you trying to strike with? I have this many tables of this many players. How much movement should there be? How much interactivity should there be? How much like global events should happen. Just trying to keep that balance between like you said, like hard, locked in sensory information at the table with that like, oh, something's happening over there and something just blew up and I don't know what's.
Yeah. So like all the lessons that I've found running, facilitating a role-playing game at a table, pacing is so important for all these different things, for energetic maintenance at the table, for making sure everybody's involved, to having those peaks and valleys, those great moments that you want. And so the 3-act structure that I had was a big part of it, in terms of building out the complexity and the interactivity, and that was front of my mind in terms of how do I unveil these things, and how do I encourage players to do it. The other teams was the other big part of it, about how to make that happen. So I alluded to there being a 6th team. They were the Earls. They were essentially sort of like information brokers. They were not physically in SCIRE, and the gimmick was that they all were just called Earl, and they refused to acknowledge that they weren't just one person. I had Earl Prime, who was played by Manuel Mello, who made some really incredible, lovely videos with a script that I handed him, and then he did some funny tech stuff. Basically, I'd be that like, oh, I'm retiring. Whoever wheels and deals the most is going to become the new Earl Prime. And they were playing a completely different game, which was freeform. They weren't locked into any tables, and they were semi-competitive with each other. So they had acquisition sheets, which was basically like, what do you want to do? And then I would offer a cost, or ask for a cost. And so they had these abstract resources that were slowly being built out, but then they were like zooming into a table. And so within the fiction of each of the tables, like a screen comes on, or an advertisement suddenly changes, and there's this new character who's there, who's able to give and offer things. So they're playing something, but because of the asymmetry, it means that all they're really trying to do is figure out what the players want and give it to them, because then it benefits them, but they're also trying to outmaneuver the other people. And then the top, in which the only really global and plot parts that element is that there's 3 VIPs, people who came in full cosplay, who were half NPC but also players, who represented these very powerful entities, these like movers and shakers. And they are people that I cast specifically and worked with. And again, they all had a relationship to each other where they didn't trust one another. And so they all have their own entrances and their own music, and they're in full outfits. And so they're going down to teams. And so they are the top level of what's going on, suggesting that they have these big influences. The Earls are kind of in the middle, both talking to the VIPs and the players, which allow the players to then kind of understand the ecosystem without being overwhelmed by it, because of the levels of symmetry and also the stratification of that I made clear in terms of what's happening, who's doing it, and where those interactions were.
How much? Obviously, the VIPs likely had the most prep, as they're playing like you said, like almost they're I don't want to say GMPC, that has a lot of baggage, but they're NPCs with very specific like guidelines and goals and characteristics. How much setup did you give the players before they started?
Yeah, so including the Earls, each team starts with a theme, which is also tied to the location. And so each player was sent a survey of these kinds of teams. What is your interest, 1 to 5? And then would you be interested in having a secret role? And then a second question, even if it included betrayal, secrets, or sabotage? And so anybody that put 5s on those, I said, very interesting, and I put them in a little pile.
Put all my little weirdos over here. Hang on.
Yeah. Because that's the other like little wrinkle that I was hoping would cause like more player emergent stuff. So there's 5 physical locations that were being manned by a facilitator. and they all had themes. And so it was largely people signing up in big groups because I don't want to split up friends. I want everybody to be there together. But if people largely said, "Oh yeah, this is the character I want to be," so they were given an email talking about the generalities of where they're starting, what their team is like, and then some goals. And then if they were a secret player, I would have another section being like, don't tell this about anybody. This is actually what you're trying to do, even though they were embedded. So you had the Affinity District, which was the Doomsday Cultists, easily the most fives given to people saying they wanted to play the Doomsday Cultists. You had the cyberspace hacktivists who literally started in cyberspace as a kind of abstract floating dream space and were trying to make their way in to SCIRE. You had your runner crew, your traditional sort of like heisty CBR+PNK people who started in Waste and Transpo and the Dredges, so sort of like the weird extended basement and open area in the bottom of SCIRE. You had the Corpo Security in Innovationary, which was your big corporate hub because the whole thing is run by a single organization, a corporation called Oracle. And then you had the campground or the park, which was at the center, and it was a big clonal colony of trees, and kind of playing on this like satirical, tongue-in-cheek like campground, but also like this sort of naturalist place. And in there, those were investigative journalists who were undercover, trying to figure things out. So those were all 5 each. There were 5 Earls, and they were all given like a broad description of their team, what the idea was, and then a few motivations, which some players stuck to, but most of them found new things they wanted to do as the emergent stuff. I even had a player who was a secret player who was so excited, took me aside early on to be like, "Oh yeah, don't worry, I'm gonna get him." And then at a three quarters of the way through, he comes up to me and says, "Hey, can I speak to you?" And it was really heavy and very hat in hand, and I was concerned like something was wrong. And I said, "Yes, of course, please." And he goes, "I know this is your game and your story, and I don't want to mess with it, but do I have to betray the cultists, man? I like them." And I'm like, "No, you absolutely don't." And he goes, "Oh, great." And he was overjoyed and he ran back. The Doomsday cultists ended up being all about trees. And so they were trying to sneak into the other districts and plant giant trees and kind of have them come back, which is nothing I told them to do. But what I told them to do was, "What's your thing?" And so they found it. And as a result, they cared about it a lot and way more than anything that I could have written. And then enacted, they would have been, "Oh, that's cool," versus "we did it." And that's what I'm looking for, is the "we did it" part.
I love that. I like the idea of being like, "I don't want to mess up your story, bro. Do I have to betray?" Like, no, you get over there and you betray them like I told you to do.
I know, yeah.
I have a legally binding email.
That's right. Yeah.
So, from the vibe of the videos, seems like, I'm sure everybody had a great time because it seemed fantastic. It's one of those things where it's like, I think a big part to me, from an outsider looking in, the big, like, really smart thing, and maybe you thought of this, you know what? I'm sure you did. Was the player count being very small and very intentional, especially for a first run at this. I think it would have been really easy to be like, "And we got 100 players and it was great." And it's like, no, it sucked. Probably it would have probably sucked. What's kind of your big takeaways? Now that it's done, now that you're on the other side of it, what are the big things that you're like, not I messed up, but like, ooh, this is a thing I hadn't considered before rubber hit the road.
Oh, so many things. The thing about mega games is you can't play test them.
Right?
You write them and then you enact them, and then hopefully they work. Which, to game designers and other people, is pretty nerve-wracking. I love playtesting. It's like the thing I do in all my handles and stuff. because I love playing people's designs. My background as a writer and being in these collaborative spaces of critique mean that like I really like listening to what people are saying, and I like thinking about what people are doing, and that kind of shared creative space I think is really amazing. So a lot of it comes down to pacing, and a lot of my reticence to place myself front and center. In the before times when I was running all kinds of mega games, um, there was a tendency, oftentimes, for the game runners or the designers to go up and monologue at the end and attempt to summarize and talk about the story and what happened. And part of a big part of me standing back and being part of it felt that that was antithetical to the experience. And so, in general, when I'm writing a role playing game or even this mega game, I'm trying to decenter myself as much as possible. It's not mine, and I don't want like my shining face that on the front. I'll do that for Emmanuel because he's so soft spoken and lovely that I'm like, I want you to play this evil information broker, and I'm like, he's great because he gave exactly the vibe I wanted in those videos. And as we were getting to the end, I didn't have timed turns, and so as a result, there was this players were getting to the end of their personally defined goals in the space. But because there wasn't a big timer on it, people weren't looking and then being like, okay, I guess we all launch our nukes. For better or for worse than having like a big climax. One of the VIPs ultimately ascends to become the big bad based on the own game that they're playing. You did talk about the derisive GMPC, but they're not. They're just asymmetrical and more powerful, but also I'm like, hey, this is what you're adding in terms of production value. But for me, it works. You have to be playing your game to win. You're competing against the other ones. So that's the player part. They're still players, even if like whenever they're on the mic, they're still like playing to the audience, and they're in costume to add to this like other production value add to kind of what's going on. So pacing is a big thing. Ray encouraged me and said, you really need to be on the mic more at the end and talk about it. I did what I like to do, which is I said, there was so many stories happening. Please, people come up and tell a little bit of what you happened. So people came up and did it. But there wasn't this like definitive button. I'm not shy about doing a monologue. I'd love it before and after like games, like in a role playing game. I think it's very important. Because your job is to frame the action and frame the story, and then everyone else like fills it in. In terms of people going from location to location, people were initially very, very reticent. They were scared to do it, which I thought was very interesting. And so, how do I encourage that, or how do I do that? And also, in terms of expansion, part of that was okay. Well, certain mega game designs have a very few number of facilitators. They're called control players. But here, I'm leveraging the idea that we have a fictional reality, a kayfabe, whatever, and that is being maintained by the GMs. But if I want more areas and more players, then there is a incremental add of the more GMs that I have. And so being able to focus on this in terms of scale meant that I was, for this first time out, able to talk about each area specifically and give everybody equal importance and like it not be overwhelming and give everybody the chance to kind of create as they go. There was also a lot of interruptions of the tables because I emphasized the reality of each area being important in a role-playing game, and I think we can, have all these GMs sort of coordinating with me kind of jumping in between and making sure everybody's supported, and if there's a detail that needs to be added or shared, like that's my role. With all the Earls jumping in, and then once the VIPs came in, it really slowed down a lot of the action happening, because an Earl would come in and talk to a table, and then a VIP would come in, and whatever was happening, whether or not it was an action scene or a mystery, or even just like what are we doing in the scene to move on to the next set piece, all of that was slowed by the interactions because they were split in two different ways. In a LARPy setting or in a mega game setting, usually you have areas you can and can't go, but you're able to do whatever from minute zero. And so as a result, the role playing happens incidentally, but also at the pace of the players. And so taking that in mind, how the different asymmetrical settings are going to be employed, making sure that maybe there's harder rules for when the Earls come by. Maybe there has to be like a green flag before they can come over. Or just like talking to the Earls afterwards. There's always talk about, oh, what if a player does this? What if a player does this? The vast majority of people that come to a con and want to sign up to something this crazy are the nicest, most accommodating people. Like, it's like the guy that didn't want to betray the cultists, saying like, "Hey, these are things happening." People universally are like, "Oh yeah, I don't want to be a dick," even if the role is asking them to be a dick. As a person, as a human being, people are very aware of that because they've spent so much time and money and effort to get to this thing. They don't want to ruin it for anybody else. So there might be a rules situation. It might be altering how many players are in each team. Less Earls. It might just be saying like, hey, don't just like sit down if people are in the middle of something. Like, get the eye line of the GM. Yeah, those are the big things I think about how to kind of bring it together, tighten up the pacing, have the big finale that everybody can come together, and then feel more confident about getting on the mic and talking. If I put myself a little more present, of which I don't love doing, but it might benefit everybody, right? And that's the goal, that everything feels satisfying for people and walking away.
In the way that's fun to talk about sometimes, like, the big like what ifs of design of like, oh, what if this, what if this, what if this. In this sort of setting, since you have a lot of experience with mega games, that from what I've seen, it's not uncommon that it's like, okay, here's all the players, and then there's actually a secret group over here. Which I think you can have different feelings about, and I think it depends a lot on the vibes and what they get up to and all of that. What would the secret cabal for SCIRE look like? What is the secret six group in the room next door look like for you?
So I've thought about this, because also you're like, wow, 30 players, way to keep it low, because some of the other debrief stuff has been about how do we add more players? And I'm like, yeah. So I've been thinking about this a lot. It's true about the secret other room stuff. I mean, that's the whole hook of Watch the Skies. And oftentimes mega games don't always have that specifically, but it's, I think, such a fun, exciting thing, because it's the unknown. And no matter what the goals and motivations of the alien players are in the other room, the fear of the unknown and the stuff that happens in people's minds is priceless. And oftentimes they're just as overwhelmed and weirded out as you, but because of the dramatic irony, they have more information than you. At least the seemingly, like, it could be anything, and so the minds were against them.
Yeah, the separation of like, especially in something like Watch the Skies, where the alien group is maybe adversarial, maybe confrontational. You have all of these other countries that are maybe confrontational, and then a thing occurs, and it's like, okay, is that part of the game? Is that because of something someone else did? Is that because of something the aliens did? Is that just a thing that the game runners have decided happens on this turn?
Yeah. So, case in point, and I agree completely, something that happened to the SCIRE game is that one of the VIPs had to leave early. They had overbooked their schedule. And so I basically, on the fly, was like, okay, of the three of you competing, whoever's gotten the furthest, you're going to kill them. And that's going to be part of your like reveal, is like being the big bad. But it ended up being the Cyber Lich that had to go away, and it also happened kind of off screen, and so as a result, it did not have the effect that I wanted. It mostly has confused players, and also everyone was like, "Oh, was this supposed to happen? And of course, the cyber lich is coming back. They're a lich,
Right.
as opposed to the reality being like, you have to go because you're going to go do another AP or another panel. So in terms of SCIRE and the possibilities for other layers or more asymmetry, particularly in secret, you got your monoliths, Evangelion, where they're like some kind of faceless entity. The whole thing is run by a corporation called Oracle, and kind of the assumption in all fiction of this kind, not necessarily cyberpunk, but in general, if you got a corporation, you better believe they're evil. So that's just kind of this like base assumption. I don't need to say that. Everyone's going to assume they're evil, and if anything bad is happening, of course they knew. Of course this, right? It's just, it goes with the fiction. And so a stronger connection to Oracle. There wasn't anybody. The closest thing was Corporate Security. They had a hidden player who was part of the hacktivists, who then immediately stole information and left them, and then never came back, which I thought was interesting. I thought maybe this would happen, but it was kind of the only time that it did, because there were secret players kind of seeded throughout. But they just left, and the Corpo Security of their own volition was like, you know what? Screw Oracle. We're going to take everything they want. So they started looting the headquarters and then just trying to get out, which again is nothing I told them to do. But I thought that was great. So certainly, like some kind of higher ups, cyberspace, I wanted to have some physical elements like hanging a shower curtain or goofy stuff around it, so that it was like obviously different because it's like the dream space. And so I absolutely could imagine putting a table in the corner and like putting a curtain around it, and there you have your steeple-fingered executives like plotting. The idea of a VIP being an entire team was kind of the splitting of Earl. Earl was kind of thought to be a VIP, but I was like, no, I think there's an opportunity here for some connective tissue. And so there's sort of a singular entity, but not really. And so any of those things could be kind of built in. The Cyber Lich could have a whole team of undead and their players, and they're, kind of separate as well. They couldn't just be a single entity. I had a bunch of different possible structures, and part of the idea was that the teams were trying to join up with one or the other VIPs and then kind of become their thing, and then kind of fight each other out in terms of what was going on. The idea that SCIRE is self-contained, it's an arcology, means that the whole rest of the world is unexplored. So there going to absolutely be another arcology that's running parallel or doing things or trying to get in, or part of the inciting incident for the mega game is there's a lockdown and nobody knows why. And so part of that isolation is why you can't move from district to district, but also creating big important questions about like, why is this happening? Things that inform what the players are going to be doing. So SCIRE could have a neighbor that's right nearby. It doesn't have to be a full doubling of the teams, because again, it's scaling with the number of facilitators each table, currently the way that it's designed. But the idea that there's like a hidden top floor and there's people surviving and they're in another room and it's outside of the normal scope. The idea being that you kind of have two accesses to two different ones, and they're being locked down, and eventually they're all open. So players are kind of walking on these lines to go from one section to another. You could easily have a room that's not accessible by this basic structure, and then reveal at a certain point that they're out there, they're doing other things. They're trying to get away, or they're at fault, or maybe they're the good old-fashioned sympathetic aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, aliens are scary, let's shoot them all down. And they're like, nah, man, we're just
no, we're cool.
We're just chilling. We're chilling. We don't have any weapons, actually.
We're just seeing if y'all have Mountain Dew.
We have Mountain Dew and save your whales. And have you not noticed our ships don't have weapons? Like, oh, we just start blowing them all up. So yeah.
I just had a really funny idea of, you've got like the whole room doing the mega game, lights, everybody shouting, having a good time. And then over here across the hall, you've got 6 players, and they're playing an escape room, and they're like in the underground vault of the SCIRE, where it's like, oh yeah, y'all broke in to steal this priceless work of art. And then they solve the escape room, and it's like, okay, cool, you solve the escape room. We have to go across the hall now. And then it's like, yeah, we found this like this event occurs because they solve the escape room during the game. And I just the imagery of being someone who's like, yeah, I was playing an escape room, and then they walked us across the hall and there was this whole other fucking thing happening. And that's the joy of mega games, is that concept of just like, yeah, what if there was this whole other thing happening?
What if there's this whole other thing? How do you, yeah, that imagination space is so exciting. When you start in like a traditional RPG where there's a facilitator and they're God with a capital G, and you got, again, my favorite, the steepled fingers, and they're hiding behind their GM screen. And then ultimately you start finding games with other philosophies that start really breaking open like what's possible and getting rid of the artifice and focusing on what's important. And for me, the joy of mega games was continuing in that about, okay, why are board games interesting and why is emergent gameplay interesting? What are these pieces? So many of the designs of traditional mega games are from computer engineers. And I was the one kind of like role player and theater person that came in who was like, this is, you guys are making theater. You realize that, right?
You're like right here. You're so close.
No, they're there. They're there. But the idea is utilizing it to its best form. How do you take advantage instead of like trying to skirt a way around it? It doesn't need like lights and razzmatazz and like what people think of when they think of like a Broadway show. But it is the idea of what production value is and how people are buying in, and that being the important part. And so for me, yeah, when all of a sudden people are throwing out ideas like, what if there's an escape room, and then they walk over, that's why this is exciting, because these are creating new connections and the novelty that makes the whole thing so damn exciting.
Games are exciting. Games are cool.
Games are exciting. Games are cool.
You know what?
Cool people talking about cool games.
Damn it.
Who are cool?
You did it. You tricked me.
Yeah.
Fell for your trap.
My cool trap.
No. The interview's done now.
Yeah, we did it, everybody.
Welcome my new podcast where I interview someone until they piss me off, and we did it. 48 minutes.
Happened again. I got kicked off another interview. Here we go.
What a wild thing that would be, of just like, I've been kicked off so many podcasts. I'm on this one now.
Right. You're like, oh man. I mean, unfortunately, in this space, like, that is such a thing. Is that like, who are these people, and are they okay? And you know, who are people around? Like, that's what community is like trying to protect each other. So, yeah.
What? Oh man, I just have so many silly questions that are just like, what if it was bigger? Because that's just like,
I'd love it to be bigger. The question is like making sure that it's playable and enjoyable, and also like, what other structures could I do? Like, one of my favorite designs of traditional mega games is called Den of Wolves, and Den of Wolves is essentially Battlestar Galactica, but with the serial numbers filed off. And you can do a huge 60 plus person game with like 3 or 4 control players, the GMs. And part of the reason why is because it's a lot of worker placement. All the different little ships, I'm the grain ship, and we're engineering, and we're oil and stuff. So you're politicking, and you're zooming back and forth between these different tables, and those tables are the different ships in the convoy. And you're like, man, we really need more grain. And the engineers are like, can't do it. We need oil, but we want your grain too. And part of the mechanical part is it doesn't need to be enacted by a control player. In Watch the Skies, you have the war map control players who's helping and maintaining like the rolling of dice to like blow things up. Science has their own control player where the scientists are going over and they're working down a tech tree. That's kind of traditionally the way they were designed. And just because something's traditionally designed doesn't mean it's the way that it has to be. And Den of Wolves also has the theatricality that I love, because you have the wolves, the Cylons are coming after you. So every once in a while, out of nowhere, this giant, just like pants-shittingly loud klaxon will come on, and you get locked down in your little ship wherever you are, which is hilariously awkward. Because while the XO and the captain and whatever, they're over by the war mat, and they're fighting their little thing, and then try and get everybody to coordinate a jump number. Everybody has these like flip books, so they have to put the right number code in to all jump together. You can't leave. You can't leave your little ship. So you're talking again, those engineers or those farmers that you barely know, and you just have to like sit there and kind of like make small talk stuck in your ship. And for me, that's the glorious part. Like that's what mecha games are so great, is that these things that like aren't in the rules or whatever, but as a result of these things coming together, why I'm like, that's the magic. That's the magic right there. You're like, so oil, huh? Like,
how's it going
I
with the
love
grain?
And then, one of the ships like decides to, doesn't stick with the convoy, and they jump to another sector, or they get left behind, and then all of a sudden these things are happening. So in terms of making things bigger, it's how do you make it run? How much is leaning on the player's agency? How much needs to be supported by those? Because I've taken this very specific route in terms of the role playing, I am desiring to find ways to kind of maintain that excitement. And for me, why I love role playing games in general, and then kind of apply this to this other structure. But then how many other control players, how many more GMs or facilitators do you need as the numbers of players start getting bigger, as the number of roles or areas or asymmetry increases? Before it's just not fun, or it's just overwhelming, and people are just 12 people in a group, like trying to get something done and just being nice. Because that's not what I want. So these are the big questions in terms of how to make that work.
Yeah, I've done. If you're not familiar, Pathfinder does interactives. It's a big tradition in like more trad games. They've been doing them since like Greyhawk days. Where you'll have big multi-table games, and if I'm honest, I had a great time with them. If I'm honest, I would say that that's probably what I'll speak for Graham in this, so you can't even say that he said anything. I'm saying that he would say it. I would bet that Graham.
Very cool of you to do that, man.
God damn it! I'm gonna have to put a little counter on the screen.
Yeah.
I think that Graham would look at that and say that that is a bad version of what they want to do, where for the interactives, to just kind of go over the mechanics, the tables are a lot more locked down than in the mega games like we're talking about. You kind of with very specific exceptions, and those exceptions are why those are exciting, but those are pretty big exceptions, and you're reporting events up to the main GM table, and that pushes story events forward. And in the way that Graham has been talking about enjoying the emergent play and kind of taking a hands-off approach, this is a much more hands-on approach, which isn't bad. And it's why like I said specifically, like I think that is I said bad. What I mean to say is poor. I think that is not what Graham is going for with this design. See, like I said, sometimes my word choice, you got to revisit it.
It sucks. Go ahead. Say what you want to say.
Graham thinks Pathfinder sucks, is what I'm saying. And so I think like thinking about this, like you're saying, like how do you make it bigger? How do you add more players? What have you? And you scale with the number of control players and facilitators. When you add more players, you have to add more admin, you have to add more structure. And it's why with this sort of thing, like my immediate thought was something like an escape room or something tangential, because like, okay, how do you make it bigger? Well, we just run a second game that's right next door, right? And we just have everyone that we have in this room again. And is that better? Is that actually an improvement? Is it fundamentally better to just have more players? Like, is more better? Is it, what's more exciting? Like everyone doing the same thing again, and then we just have to add 5 more people at the top to manage everything? Is it more interesting to add people doing something asynchronously, where you have someone who, like you mentioned Oracle, like is there someone who's in charge of Oracle and is making changes to the structure of the arcology? Like, ooh, that's interesting. That only really requires 1, maybe 2 more people. I think this is such an interesting design space coming at it from a TTRPG angle, because it's shocking to me that I don't want to say that like this is the first, because it probably hasn't. I just didn't see it. That's the thing I've started to learn. If you think something is the first thing, it almost certainly isn't. there was almost certainly something else. You just didn't hear about it. It wasn't as publicized. It wasn't as available. But what's interesting coming at it from a TTRPG space, like I said earlier, is like that focus on emergent play, that focus of people going, what's that? What's that? Who's that? I'm really excited about that. Like the cultists getting really into trees is perfect. It's like, that's incredible. And like you said, that's so much more fun than like, yeah, you're a cultist and you want to take down the arcology. It's like, maybe I don't want to. That sounds bad. What if I just want to put trees everywhere? Like, I'm also destroying the arcology. That's a type of apocalypse. Is what if there were just trees everywhere, man?
Yeah. In terms of what makes SCIRE different, it's a combination of my philosophies from passionately both running, thinking about, writing, and reading role-playing games kind of forever. Because everybody has kind of their gap. They're like, oh, I used to play D&D in high school. I'd like really get back to it. I just like never ever stopped. There's like the 10,000 hours thing. Like I've lapped that multiple times over the years. But not like in the phrase that I really hate, the forever GM. It's because I'm exploring, I'm curious, and the ways that I like to run games and then now write games to kind of share that philosophy is how to make it more engaging and interesting. Most of these trad games are cookbooks and don't actually teach you anything about what you're doing. They're all folk games. They're all learned by like an older cousin or a kid down the block. And now with APs, like that's kind of the new form of people, quote unquote, don't know how to do it right. Nobody learned to play Red Rover from a book, and that is how largely table culture and then broader culture have kind of been established. Similarly, when megagames popped up, all of their design choices were being informed by everything that came before, but also by the people designing them. Like, where did they come from with their gaming philosophies, and how did that come in? And it's true. Pathfinder has these interactives, and you're passing information up, which for me is not
bad,
as interesting.
Bad. Like I said you said it was bad, so it's bad.
Yeah. Matt says it sucks. It sucks shit, and will always suck shit. For me, it's less about it being bad and more about so much is left on the table. It is wasted potential in the way that you are doing as an individual player, and every individual player is not doing anything any differently than what they would in a traditional game. You are being told, not shown, that things are happening elsewhere, and then you have these players who are running back and forth and feeding information so that like they know a meta plot is increasing. Like that doesn't change the way that I play my character at my table or I enter a combat encounter. I'm just looking at the abstraction of something larger. Well, it doesn't actually affect me personally. And for me, that's like a pretty simple kind of design about trying to get all these people together. And for me, not what's exciting about my home games or games that I run, and certainly not exciting about what happens in mega games. Sure, we could have a big boss fight, or we could all be on one giant ship, and we're all doing different goals. And maybe it's happening something, or maybe we all have a big pool of hit points, and I'm fighting the foot, and you're fighting the other foot, and we have some people fighting the tail, and eventually fight the big dragon. It's still not any different from us fighting one dragon and then us individually at the table. We know that people are doing things, but like it takes a lot of work and time, and ultimately it's for nothing. And so that's what I'm looking for in terms of this design, and what I am trying to get from it. It's on one hand why I think mega games are important and why they're interesting, and then why role-playing games are important and interesting. And everyone runs every game they've ever run differently, either by active choice or because they think it's the way they're supposed to do it. And for me, it's about intentionality and how much I trust the player space, and then being able to support the GMs, what's going on, because then I do feel like it is an ecosystem and complex and exciting, in a way that the premise of both the design and the culture and even like what is a mega game promises that I'm looking to fulfill.
That's such a great, well reasoned answer after the very silly thing that I did where I said it was bad.
Right, where you said it all sucks shit.
Yeah, where I said. I will say the best part of doing those interactives was when you were playing as a high level character. There was nothing better than like we finished our little thing and we're waiting for the next like part to trigger. I'm gonna go over this table of like lobies and just like everyone gets a big bonus. Like it's very in the way that trad games are power fantasies. It is very peak power fantasy to just like levitate over to a table full of low characters that are like just getting their butt handed to them and be like, I'm gonna summon an infernal lion to help them. Pieces. If that's what you're going for, that's really good. That's the sauce.
I never played a lot of World of Warcraft, but my brother was like a GM, and so he got a free account and stuff. It was never for me. But my favorite thing to do would to play support classes when you're running across the map, and you would just like bless people going across, and people would be like, "What?" It would like blow their minds. and while I'm just like, I don't think I'm into this game. This is really boring. Hey, look, a person, bless. Like it'll last an hour of real time of this thing you're spending money to do. This game. And that's what that reminds me of like walking over and being like, "Infernal Lion, anyone?"
Yeah.
You're welcome.
It's very silly, but if that's what you're there for,
silly's okay. Silly's great even. I've long felt that you can be earnest and silly at the same time and do both, right? Like laughing at the table and making jokes or playing an absurd character concept doesn't always necessarily mean that you're breaking tension, as long as you are earnest in the way that you deliver it. So, everything is possible. Silly's good.
The best year was the year they let us play Pathfinder Adventure card game for it. As the card game sicko, I was very pleased that year. And then never again.
Yeah, I bought that immediately because spoiler, I love Pathfinder, especially Pathfinder 2. But that's because in middle school I was running 3.0 and 3.5 and then left for many years to like go play, Call of Cthulhu and Vampire the Masquerade and whatever I get my hands on. And then when I saw that Pathfinder was a thing, I was like, oh no, they're pulling me back in. And so I ran it a lot for a number of years because I was so, again, fascinated from the years of design, like what I had thought about as a very young person and then into like a young adult when I was playing Pathfinder. And I love Pathfinder 2. I think it's like so smart in terms of the way that it pulled out. But also I ran a couple board game cafes. So when the adventure card game came out, I was so excited, and then I played it, and it was not for me. Again, it's the promise. Like, what is it delivering? Like, oh, it's a simple, the RPG parts, the things that are delivering that you want. But yeah, I don't know. It just wasn't enough there for me. Totally a taste thing,
Yeah. Listen, Graham, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I've had more than enough people tell me that they don't like the card game.
I didn't connect with it.
As the person who for my region was in charge of going around and trying to get people to play the card game, I've had more than enough people tell me they didn't like the card game. Yeah. And you know what? I took that personally.
Good. Good. It's cool of you to do that.
I swear to God. Complete non sequitur here. At the intro, you mentioned you're an occasional puppet, and I want to talk about what that means.
Yeah, so I did a lot of theater, and so part of some of the stuff I've done is training with puppeteering, both making puppets and then performing. And in other past lives, I've been part of like RPG puppet streams, like playing RPGs as puppets. And it's something I want to do more of. The last Zine Quest was a lovely. One of my favorite games. God, I'm so sorry, Kurt. I can't remember. It's like a sock puppet game. I wish I could remember the name of it. But you make puppets and you play as puppets. They recently actually just played Under the Autumn Strangely, which is so exciting. He reached out to me months ago and said they were going to do it. And I was like, you should do it as puppets. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean?
That's a really clear do it as puppets.
Do it as puppets. Because he did something really kind in one of the first updates is he had a puppet, and part of the stretch goals was like being given the puppet. I don't know how it went, but the picture was the puppet reading Under the Autumn Strangely, which I thought was like really, really sweet of him. So yeah, puppets rock. When I got married, part of the ceremony was a puppet show, because I was also eliminating as many rituals as I could, because most marriage rituals are ugly and about ownership and patriarchy. And so I wanted something. So I had a few that I added that I wanted to be anarchical without being disrespectful. So puppet show is what I came up with. So yeah, puppets are great. Do more RPGs with puppets. They're cool.
Was it? I remember very recently seeing Jeff Stormer do an AP with Moonshot. I don't know if the game was everyone was puppets or if Jeff decided he was a puppet, but he made a very cheap, quick, like sock puppet, which I think had just like little felt hands taped on it. I'm gonna have to find that. That's gonna be in the show notes. He just brought it up not that long ago. Yeah. God, shouts to the show notes. Shouts to me some amount of time from now that's like, what the hell was I talking about? What? It's fun. Sometimes it's not, but overall it's very fun.
I like the rod puppets a lot because for me the kind of comic potential is when you can do stuff with like the hand or the arm or whatever in addition to like the head.
Mm-hmm.
So I love a sock puppet, but like my favorite puppets to use were always ones with the rods, because I felt like you could do the most stuff with them.
Have you seen? I'm gonna start as generally as possible, and then we'll get more specific. Have you seen the puppet lady on TikTok who makes music? She makes music, and she wrote a song because her boyfriend broke up with her, and she made a puppet to like as like a bit for the music, like the video specifically for the song, and then she puppeted Too Close to the Sun, and now she's famous for puppets.
That's what happens to the best of us. And at the risk of Pathfinder adventure card game all over again, Matt, I don't do TikTok.
Oh, that's fair.
Because it's a drug.
That's fair.
It's too good. I've had to delete it twice from my phone, because the way the algorithm matches to you, like I feel it being behavior changing. And it's just straight out of the veins. Like it's a pure dopamine Skinner box.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I need it
as a decision for myself. I'm like, I can't have this on my phone. So I've taken it off multiple times. There was, when it was new, I had a day off and I was sitting on my couch getting ready to start my day, and I like blinked and like 7 hours had passed. I was like, I can't do this.
That's
shit.
That's a good sign.
And that was the first time I deleted it. So I rely on other people for most social media to talk about stuff and me to be like, no, I have not heard of the puppet lady on TikTok.
That's fair. See, this is what a lot of people say, and I think that's a very valid and good and emotionally healthy response. I have broken brain disease. And,
yeah, we all do.
And the way that I keep it in check.
It's cool to have a broken brain now, man.
And the way that I keep it in check is with the silly little people that live in my phone.
Sure.
And you know what? It doesn't work for everybody. We all find our own way.
Regulating your nervous system is very important, and there's plenty of ways to do it. And
do you know the worst part? I just saw a TikTok of hers the other day. I will not be able to find it because searching anything on TikTok is a fucking a nightmare. There's no way. It doesn't exist in that way. The app was not made for that. I have to hope that I've said it enough that my phone remembers it.
Right.
And then
it puts it, and then gives it back to you.
Yeah, and puts it in the algorithm.
Gosh, I would love it of the puppet lady talking about rutabagas.
I appreciate your commitment. I appreciate you're bought into the support. I love it.
Yeah, of course. I want that video too.
I gotta find it for the show notes. And I bet you if I type puppet music lady in like a search engine, I'll get there. Somebody has re-uploaded it to Instagram, and I'll be able to find.
Sure, somebody's stolen the video.
Yeah, I'm betting on the fact that someone stole the video. What a weird 2025.
Welcome.
I'm not a fan. You know, Not the
Well, we
2024
got
was
plenty left, Matt.
No, don't worry.
Unlike everything else we've been talking about, it has not been cool. 2025, you
Ugh.
have not been cool.
I'm doubly mad now. I'm like mad, and then you put other mad on top of it. What I'm not mad about, we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, and we'll talk about it more now because I think it's really cool. Under the autumn quarter, strangely, I don't know why I said quarterly. I don't know why that's under the autumn. Strangely,
Well, there are 4 seasons, and there is plenty of room for expansion.
To the seasons, like a 5th one.
Hell yeah! Haven't you read that book? It's great.
I love how weird this game is.
Thank you.
Yeah, like there was a part of me after I in case I cut it out of the intro because I do that sometimes. I mentioned to Graham at the beginning, I was watching the actual play from Gnome Ann of them playing Under the Autumn Strangely, and it was very weird. And I was like, how much of this is like the people on the show and how much of this is the game? And I went and I read the PDF and I was like, oh, it's the game. It's just all it's, I mean, the acting
full
and all
credit
of that.
to Gnome Ann and M and
the acting and all of that, they all brought
people.
it. They all brought it, but it was like, oh, that's text. That is following the vibe that the game wants you to inhabit. So good job writing a game that's weird and creepy.
Thanks.
With like very little overhead. Like the game,
yep.
the in a very funny. First of all, I give you a lot of credit. I was having a conversation with some friends in a Discord about how stupid Rule 0 is, and at the same time that was happening, I was reading the PDF where, while there are fake people in the book learning about how to play the game, Graham Deadpools into the rules explanation to explain a part. And then Deadpool's out, which I think is great. And then later the characters are like, well, is that how it works? And one of the fake characters says, I don't know, Grant's not here, fuck him, which is fantastic, which is like very perfect. So again, kudos. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's so much about my game philosophy, and also like once you get into this world, which I encountered with the board game libraries, like what is different about board games now? It's because like designers have a capital D on them, and I think that is a big part of the way the culture is driven and talked about. And the thing I see over and over again is when people get a new game and they want to be doing it right or doing justice to the game, which is a lot of the audience for APs. And so in terms of playing it right or ignoring certain things, that felt like the perfect example of how to do it and like do it as well. Because they have a question about a rule, and then I pierce time and space to tell them they can ignore the rule, actually. Not like the right way to do it. And then they thank me and then I leave. And absolutely, there's a second punchline where they're like, okay, we do it this way. And it's like, well, Graham's not here, which is also true and would be true even if I hadn't breached space and time to step in. So it exists in and of itself. But because the extra layer, I'm trying to say something else about like the way I think games are learned and the way they're taught to friends, and the like death of the author stuff with the kind of existing outwards and like what that is. And that goes so far into the way I wrote and designed the game, which again is trusted in players, which is that like I've assigned these buckets and I put these labels on and I say, fill up these buckets, go. So it's not Graham Gentz's over the garden wall game. It's this experience that I want the players to have ownership for, and be high-fiving and hugging as they walk away, drawing into the alchemy. The thing that I think is so important about role-playing games are those pure magic moments that occur when everyone's like, whoa, what was that? And so that is the stuff I'm trying to make happen with the rules.
It takes a lot of, I mean, you said it perfectly, like trust in the player that you can write. So for people who don't know, Under the Autumn Strangely, first of all, go read it. It's like 30 pages. It's great. Grant tells himself to fuck himself. It's hilarious. Seriously, it is the funniest thing to me from a I wrote this in a book standpoint, is the funniest thing. There are 3 roles. There is the traveler, the person who was lost through the weird space. There is the person who is inhabiting all of the stuff in the weird space. And then there is the terror, whose job is to just be a creepy little guy. And I think Gnome did a fantastic job getting Cameron to do it, because Cameron, in the little bit that I watched, is so perfect in that role of letting the other 2 speak, and then just, here's a creepy thing.
Yeah.
And that's
there's many ways.
That's so good.
There's a lot of talk about the fruitful void in terms of design. Like, you have these rules, it's the text, and what is everything else happening either between, or it's all cycling around something in the middle, what is occurring. And the phrase rules light is one that I really don't like, because it is a patch to talk about certain movements and ethos that I don't think we currently have terms for. Rules light just means it's not 200 pages. 1-pagers are rules light, but then so also are like zines and even like experimental stuff, like Under the Item Strangely, or stuff more experimental, which is my favorite things to find and read and play. For me, part of the joy is that people either hearing the rules, being told them, or reading them and absorbing them, and then how do they bring their philosophy of play to it. And so I have, in many ways, in writing it and afterwards, imagined what I think the game would look like. And when it doesn't show up like that, or it does, they're both equally interesting to me. And so having Cameron lean in and like have those little additions is absolutely part of this like great mixing thing that I want everybody to be doing.
I forget who I was chatting with, but it came up in a different episode of like, I know in that episode I said, if I ever wrote a game, I don't think I could watch an AP of it, because I don't know if I could have that that separation of authorial intent of like, oh no, that's not what I wanted you to do. And I think that's bad, but not in a big way.
The very first AP that I know of CBR+PNK, Emmanuel asked Ray to do it. And was Emmanuel's pretty soft spoken and shy, and so I'll play it, but I don't want to run it. And it's been a long time since I like looked at that, but Ray has since then talked about it, about how he got almost all of the rules wrong, and was mortified or whatever, because he's also like representing MythWorks and all these things, as well as like his personal relationship with Emmanuel. And Emmanuel had the best time and like reached out to him afterwards, was like, that was so great, Ray. Thank you. I had so much fun, despite the rules all being wrong. And in terms of you and this hypothetical game, like, it's really about like what it comes down to and what the end result is. And if you feel like that's appropriate or not, like, what do you go in with the goal of making this thing the authorial intent? Whether or not there's a very special rule that makes everything work and it's not right. For me, that's like part of the pre-play testing part, where you're like, oh, I'm not being able to communicate these ideas. Are they getting it wrong? Or am I getting it wrong because I wrote it wrong or I explained it wrong? Which is all like really interesting information to me. Write a game and have people run it. You'll see what happens. Sounds pretty cool.
Oh my God. There's like half a second now where I feel where like my universe shatters as I remember what's happening.
How cool you are. That it's cool. This is the new tagline for your pod.
Graham and I might be actual enemies at the end of this podcast. We might actually, it might actually
add to the list.
We might be real rivals. No, I think you get to exactly like the feeling I would have is like, I think it would be closer to constant stress of like, oh, I did this wrong. Like if this is what they're doing, I did this wrong. Like, oh, what did I, like, because I think I've talked a lot about this in other places of like, for different media, different art, of just like once the thing is created and it's out there, there's no connection, like you said, like death of the author, like there's no connection between the person who created it and the work. And I'm not talking about like J.K. Rowling, fuck her, don't read Harry Potter. That's not what we're talking about.
Or just errata, or just other things.
Yeah,
or
where,
the way that like
where it's like you've created a thing, and the way that people interpret it and interact with it and consume it and react to it is separate from the intentions that you had with creating it, and it's incredibly difficult to like shape what those things will be. It's very difficult to say like when I play this game, when people play this game, I want them to be scared, and you can try, and you can. I think it's why like a lot of times having things that aren't just rules text in TTRPGs is great, to be like, hey, here's the vibes that I want for this sort of game. Yep. Here's kind of my intention. Here's the stories that I want you to tell, because then you as the person reading it can be like, okay, I get what we're going for. I understand what where we want to be. And I think I would always want to just claw it back to fix it. And
sure.
that feels like a negative response to it as a creative person. And maybe that's why I'm not a creative person. We've talked about that. It's a thing that's come up on the podcast.
I mean, the platitude that comes to mind is like perfect be the enemy of good. And when people are making things like wanting to mess with it, and it's hard when it's your project. And the closer you get to completion, you're physically walking towards this like plate of glass. And so when you're far away, you have context. And the closer you are to completing it, the less and less context you have, and until your nose is pressing against it. And you don't know if it's good or bad. And all of the other kind of difficulties come forth because you have no objectivity. And cathartically and healthily, you need to say it's done. Or else, like, you're just going to tumble down that hill forever. There's plenty of examples, old JK or otherwise, of people wanting to keep putting footnotes or additions or errata or whatever. And sometimes people read it, sometimes people don't. This is often why you have like second, third editions or whatever. Oftentimes it's just pure marketing. Sometimes there's like a brutal error in the center or something. There's all kinds of reasons to do it. And for me, you just have to be okay with it being external of you. It's like a painting. You make the painting and then it's on a wall and you're not in the same room as the painting. Are you affecting what people are feeling when they look at it? No. Are you there to like explain things? No. Is that okay? Yes. Is that part of the magic of it and what art is? Yes. So I think it's okay, man. I think your hypothetical game is just great.
Thank you. Thank you for thinking my fake game is super cool, Graham. Thank you.
Yeah.
I actually did message my friend the other day because I had an idea for I had an idea for a hack of a game, and when I say I had an idea for a hack of a game, I had a title. And I was like, what do you think about this title? And he was like, that's pretty good. And then I forgot about it for 2 weeks. So it'd be pretty funny if I came out of nowhere with a game.
Yeah, why not?
I think that'd be pretty funny. So let's get into homework before I give Graham any more opportunities to say how cool something is or isn't. Fuck, that's what I'm doing.
There it was. Gooseberries.
So for people who don't know, this is somehow your first episode. I'm so mad at you. Homework is the bit where I give the guest a little work and I have them bring 3 to 5, Graham. 3 to 5 things that they think are neat and they want to share with you, in the way that the purpose of the podcast is to share neat things with the audience. So, Graham, what do you got?
So of my 3 to 5 things, I wanted a variety. So I have music, books, video games, comic books. I had SCIRE on there for some reason. I really didn't know what we were going to talk about.
You wrote SCIRE, and I was like, that's funny.
I didn't know what we were on. I thought it was all homework. I thought we were going to talk about 3 to 5 things the whole time.
Oh, I got you. I see. Okay, I understand. I did think it was very funny if you were like, if you get all the way to the end and you're like, what's your homework? Like, you should go to PAX Unplugged and play SCIRE.
Sure. More people, tighter, like whatever we can do. It's the goal. SCIRE 2.0. I'll talk about roaming first. I love comic books. It's so funny that you were describing Under the Atom Strangely because you kept referring to the Weird Space, which is the name of my comic book, but I spelled weird with a Y, so it's like the Weird Sisters. But I've always loved comic books, and growing up, we moved a lot and didn't have a lot of money. So libraries, the public library was like a big, big temple for me. And so I would go to 751.5, which is the Dewey Decimal System where all the comic books are, which is how I found like Tintin and Asterix and Obelisk and like all this stuff when I was very, very young, like 4, 5, 6. And I still do it. I'll walk into a library and I'll walk over and I'll pick up a random book. And so recently I found this thing called Roman. It is written and drawn by a pair of Canadian cousins, and I was immediately struck by the color palette, which is all these like really understated pastels. And while this I think was fiction, often my favorite comic books are like these really personal memoirs. Mouse completely changed my life when I read it for the first time. And in Roman, it's 2 high school friends, and they've just like finished their first year of college, meeting in New York, and they've brought a third friend, and it's just like a unified story of them spending this time, coming of age and friendship, and the art is so beautiful and interesting. These characters seem very, very personal. They're all AFAB, and there's a lot of queerness and queer expression. I picked it up off the shelf. I read it cover to cover, and then put it back, which the library is really, really good for.
Yeah, the library wants you to do that. They're totally cool.
The Tanaki cousins, I think, is what they're called. This was like last week when I read it, so. As opposed to a bookstore, you mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Libraries are like, yeah, please do that. That sounds great. Like, you could check it out, but then also immediately return it just so we get like the numbers. But a bookstore will get real mad at you. That didn't stop us in Borders, though. So.
Yeah, fuck you, Borders.
How funny would it be if that was the narrative of like, yeah, we did that because we hated Borders?
I mean, there's worse reasons to read books.
That would be funny.
So yeah, there's one of my 3 to 5 things, I guess.
I'm excited for you keep saying 3 to 5. I'm excited for you to not stop at 5 and be like, here's number 7 of my 3 to 5. I feel like it's gonna happen.
Is that what I'm doing? Am I just gonna monologue about all these things?
I don't think. Oh yeah, go for it. Yeah, no, this is your time to talk about to talk about what's cool. I didn't do it intentionally that time. That one was not intentional. That's just, there's only so many words.
That's the problem with being cool, is you don't mean to do it. It just happens. So I'm a compulsive curator, Matt. Is a title I've given myself because it's part of my, I mean, I'll use your phrase, broken brain. And like, for example, like I love Star Trek. Star Trek is I describe that I like it more than I like most things. And with my partner during the pandemic, we started doing like complete rewatches. We had already watched Deep Space Nine together, which is my favorite. But it was the pandemic, so why not watch TV shows of 7 seasons, full old school 26 episodes each? And so for no reason, I decided to start giving every episode, each of us had a rating from 1 to 10, and then I would do an average. So I have this really weird, very long, multiple tab spreadsheet of different Star Trek series, and every episode being given an arbitrary little number.
Hell yeah.
So you want curated lists of stuff, I got it. I love Letterboxd. Letterboxd is a godsend because it's a movie app. and I get to write reviews and give ratings and see what movies I've watched over like a year and forever. Which also my little data brain is like, hooray! Like this is my pointless little number. And so I will start a list all year, which is the best movies I've watched of 2023, 24, 25, and then at the end I'll like compile it into like my top 10. And so the movie that I watched most recently that I put on this list, that I've been meaning to watch for a while, that I feel like I didn't see any other places, is called The Promised Land. It's a Danish movie. It takes place in like the mid 18th century. It stars Michael Madsen, who found mainstream acclaim as the bad guy in Casino Royale, and you see him around. He's in movies. But I get the impression he's like the shit in Denmark. And I also think he's a fabulous actor. In every interview I've seen with him, he seems just like a really chill guy. But the movie, again, I don't really know much about Denmark beyond like plays, which don't really tell you anything about Denmark, as well as like World War II YA lit. And apparently there's like a third of the Denmark peninsula called the Heath, which was like cultivatable. And so you have Michael Madsen like going out and trying to create a potato farm and being messed with by this evil land-owning noble. The cinematography is absolutely gorgeous. It was like jaw-dropping the whole time. And had a real American Western feel to it because of the use of space and the competent man like going to do this stuff. But the problem with Westerns is that they're a fantasy and they come with all this baggage of like Western expansion and genocide and lies, just generally like American lies and propaganda. And so plenty of my films that I love are aesthetically or storytelling wise or cinematically doing certain things, but it's really hard to avoid what they represent and what have represented. So it feels like a Western, but it's not in the American West. It's in Denmark in like the 1700s. And I super duper enjoyed it. From a character standpoint, from the writing, from the odd setting, the time and place, and like I said, it's shot so beautifully, just like jaw-droppingly gorgeous. So yeah, that's The Promised Land, which I think in Danish the title was like Bastarden, which is just the bastard. I'm amused. Plenty of times we see American movies and they're translated weirdly into other countries. So it's fun to see the opposite of that, where they're like, maybe not the bastard, the Promised Land. Americans will love that. So
it might have tested better if it was the bastard.
Maybe. So 2 down, 3 to 5 to go.
That's math.
It's math. I mean, it's numbers. I don't know if it's math. Let's see. I do play video games, but it's the kind of thing where at this point in my video game playing career, if the first couple hours, like if it's a AAA game often, unless it's interesting me, I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure I know what this is going to be. Not just because of my experience, but also just because when you have a video game that is so expensive to make, you're very risk averse, because you need to be a success, because the whole companies rise and fall with these projects, which is why so many design decisions tend to be like so conservative, just because it's like a pure amount of money. And so again, like the role-playing games I like to play, most of my games are like the indie projects, not because specifically I'm a hipster, but because they tend to be like more experimental and doing things that I hadn't thought of, or challenging. So Case of the Golden Idol is one of the best games I've played in a very, very long time. It's very much inspired by another single creator, Lucas Pope, who made Papers, Please, one of my favorite games of all time, and then The Return of the Obra Dinn, an amazing detective game, with a unified theme and aesthetic, and again, interesting. And I thought Oberdin couldn't be topped, and I think I like Golden Idol more. And I don't really want to go into like why they're so interesting or so good because they kind of verge on spoileriness. But if you like detective games with unique mechanics, particularly of kind of environmental storytelling and world building, like these are the two of the best games I've played in a couple years, I think.
We're my partner and I are about to start Case of the Golden Idol. We started a different puzzle game first because we were like, let's try this first.
Was it Blueprints? Everyone's talking about Blueprints.
We had just finished Blueprints. And
did you like it? Because I feel like I've heard such like you're in the yes camp.
Oh,
okay.
I am very strongly in the yes camp, and I absolutely understand a lot of the people in the no camp.
It's very polarizing, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, and agreed. And that was part of why, Closer when it came out, that polarization is what made me go like, okay, something's here. When you have people that generally have similar opinions on a lot of games, not exactly the same, but like, everyone's generally positive. When there's such a big split, that's when you're like, what's happening here? What is happening that
Absolutely.
there are so many? And so, yeah, I was about to recommend Blueprints to you if you haven't played it because
I have not because of the kind of how public it is. One of my proclivities when something's making the rounds is to wait a very long time before I like give it its due. Largely because I just kind of want to interact with it in and of itself, which is why now that SCIRE has kind of been done and my other professional responsibilities are done, I'm doing the big thing and finally playing Baldur's Gate 3, which I'd put off for a very, very, very long time. I love CRPGs because I love tabletop RPGs, and so of my like favorite top 10 games of all time, anywhere between like 5 to 7 of them are computer RPGs. From like the early 90s to mid 2000s, because they're the ones that scratch my brain real good, and so yeah, eventually maybe I'll play Blueprints once they're not showing up on my social media feeds with somebody giving a hot take about it. I'm really enjoying it. Here's my screed on why it sucks shit, and me being like, all right, I just gotta let these.
I would probably just block that person. That sounds like that person sounds uncool to jump out of nowhere and be like, that sucks. That sounds bad.
I'm being facetious.
Oh, okay.
They are lengthy, well worded critiques.
Okay.
Of which I'm like, I have no context for this. I don't want to have it yet.
Yeah, and I do first. Doing that with Baldur's Gate 3 right now is like actively better. Is like it.
All the extra stuff too. Like, yeah, there was like updates and whatever.
The Baldur's Gate 3 that you're going to play is actively better than the Baldur's Gate 3 that my wife and I played.
Sure.
In a way that's like that's video games. That's how it goes. We do need to go back and finish that. We're really close to the end.
I was just gonna say similarly. So I bought Hades 2 as soon as it premiered on early access, and then beat as much of it as I could. There were certain places that you just couldn't get any further, and at this point I'm like, great, I will play it when the full game is out now, which I don't always do. I played like 100 hours of Darkest Dungeon when it was in early access, and then was just like, wow, this game's amazing. And then when it came out again, or when it was released fully and I played it, I was like, this isn't the same game I played. And all of my hot strats were useless. Which, by and large, are probably better for it. Yeah, I know games move and change, and part of it is I wonder what all the updates are going to be and these things. But I don't have no context for it. I just know it as this like monolithic thing. So for me, people are like, "Oh, update 8 was crazy," and I'm like, "Don't know what that is."
Okay, cool.
I've made a personal choice, and I get to live my subjective reality in that way, and I'd hope it's the right choice.
I think it's the right choice because I think like we were talking about with art and authorial intent and stuff like that. I think video games are unique in that they're the one medium that you like really can update in a way that like,
Sure.
hey, sometimes it's bad, but most of the times it's good. Most of the times it's like, oh, hey, this broke in a way we didn't intend, so let's fix that.
Yeah, it's also just called support, right?
Yeah.
Like the idea of like, will this game be supported?
Mhm.
My favorite multiplayer game of the past year was Helldivers 2, which I continue to think is just a masterpiece. And it is totally built on further support because they just keep coming out with more things for it. And then there is a meta plot. I was like out of town for a few weeks and then was like, what's going on? And hopped back in and everything was wildly different. Like Super Earth had been invaded and like everything was absolutely crazy. And because it is multiplayer and the loop is so tight, you're not playing through a game or a story. When those big changes occur, they are the spike of novelty and interest and confusion is so high. Because that is part of the structure as they're trying to update and change it as they go.
Helldivers 2, I want to be held as a high watermark for what a multiplayer game, like what a air quotes live service game can look like.
Totally.
Like I want that game to be on people's shortlist when I say people, I mean like developers. When developers are like, we want to make a live service game, what do we want it to look like? Like I want Helldivers 2 to always be in that list for like multiple reasons. Like it's
many reasons.
Like it's the gameplay is super fun. The narrative design like internally is great. The meta plot elements are super great. Like it has a lot of elements. I used to be a big Destiny player. And I think a lot of the things that are good in Helldivers 2 is what it felt like Destiny was when I was playing it. And I mean, actually, when I was playing it a lot, that's what it was. And then it went free to play and the whole business model changed. It's what I feel like Bungie thinks they're doing. And then it's like, oh no, actually what you have is one story mission every 2 weeks that you can't like progress at all. And I just have to wait. And then I have to grind for loot in the middle.
Yeah.
But I don't play Destiny anymore. So
good for you.
Congratulations. It did honestly feel like...
Do you have your chip?
It did honestly feel like ending a toxic relationship. It did.
Of course it did.
Like in a very real way, it felt weird. And like everybody went back for the last expansion, like the big story end expansion. And I hadn't been playing for like 4 or 5 months at that point. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm okay. I think it's better. I think it's better if I don't. I think it's better if I leave that door closed.
What do you think I'm about to say, Matt?
It's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool of you.
I swear to God, Graham and I are either best friends or mortal enemies at the end of this podcast. There's no middle ground. There's no middle ground.
That's the way it works. Very polarizing.
What I was going to say way back when is, and I'm not going to discuss anything about it because I respect your choice to not engage with it. One of the things that's very interesting about Blueprints is how difficult it is to talk about it.
Interesting.
And in my opinion, Graham's hanging out with people that are like doing big posts on social media, and that's fine. For me, part of what grabs me so much about it and what held me, we played it for 118 hours, which is so long.
Whoa.
Yeah, like this last weekend is the first weekend since it came out that we didn't boot it up and play it at all. There were four different times that I remember talking to my friends or talking to somebody and saying, I think we're nearing the end of our time with Blueprints. I think we're just about done. And that went on for months and months. I think there are a lot of elements that make it difficult to talk about in a general sense, in a way that would ruin the experience. But it is interesting that can happen with a video game when so often every moment of a video game is immediately disassembled and broadcast and codified. So yeah, when you finally play Blueprints, I want to hear all about it.
Sure, sure. I'll put it on a list of 3 to 5 things. The books that I've been rereading, I love sort of classic paperback pulp, sword and sorcery and sci-fi, and a lot of these writers are heroes to me because of how quietly innovative, like, so many of them were. So I've been reading a lot of Jack Vance, who has made so many incredible um, different, like, micro book series. I'm reading a uh, sci-fi fantasy sort of planetary romance thing of, space people crashing on a weird sort of sword and sorcery planet, which is just absolutely everything that I want. Um, and I'm going back and reading a series that I'd only ever read like 1 or 2 books in, and even as a kid, like, didn't realize that they were part of a continuity, because these little 100, 200 page little handbooks, like, they're pretty self-contained. Um, and Michael Moorcock would do this intentionally, and famous for um, oh my god, the Black Sword guy. Oh my god.
Elric.
Elric. That's kind of his big thing. Um, but he wrote a bunch of other stuff, and the stuff that, like, I never saw anybody talk about. The Elric's sword just got ripped off so many different times, so many different ways, especially in a role playing sense. In your Greyhawks or whatever, if there was a black sword that was incredibly powerful and sucked the life out of somebody, you know where it came from. But the History of the Rune Staff is a series that I really, really like, because it's got these really big, weird swings that aren't really important to what's happening, but at its essence, it's, sword and sorcery political series of, like, family lines and nation states. Um, and you're pretty certain it's, like, literally our Earth, because you can tell, like, oh, this is Europe, and oh, this is supposed to be these things, and not because you look at maps, but because, like, part of it you're, like, figuring it out. Um, and a lot of the time it's sort of mysterious magic, powerful, weird magic, the way sword and sorcery does really well. Sometimes it's about a morally gray adventure, but then also, like, the evil empire has technology, and it's clearly Great Britain. They have, like, doom ships, and on the mainland, the best beast of burden are giant flamingos. And so all of a sudden you're just like, hey, wait, what? While you're like, oh yeah, there's this cool fight with a weird monster and a guy with a cool sword, I like this guy. And then he gets back on his riding flamingo, and you're like, what? Jewel in the Skull and the Mad Amulet. A lot of Michael Moorcock's stuff was united in, he had this like universal champion, and again, I'm not getting the name right, but this idea that, like, this person was more or less connected in all these universes and stuff. And again, in, like, these really easy to digest novels that I just think were just, like, really, really good grist for the people writing some of the original role-playing games, but then, like, roll downhill. Your first D&D campaigns and, like, chainmail and all this stuff is like, oh, it's Lord of the Rings, but a lot of it feels a lot more like Conan to me, and like Robert E. Howard, in terms of, like, the fundamental pieces of, like, where the influences come from. Yeah, I have many of them. I love the style of art and the cover of these pulp novels. And they're very comforting to me. So that's kind of been my, I got nothing to do and I get to read a book for pleasure stuff that I've been doing.
I do like seeing the old paperbacks, and they're like this big, just a nice
They're
little
so nice.
feel in the hand.
Yeah.
We went to a book sale.
Many of them.
We went to a book sale recently, and I was, they've got, like, all the hardcovers, and I was like, I don't have any time for you. And I was like, give me, it's gotta have a little bend to it. It's gotta have a little character.
It's gotta have the smell. It's gotta be just a little bit yellow. It's gotta have, like, fantastic cover art that was, like, hand painted by somebody. Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, the more I delve into it, like, now that I'm an adult, it's like remembering the things that I read, but then also realizing, like, it just goes so much deeper than I realized, because these authors were just churning stuff out. And being okay with the idea of like reading a bad book, also being part of it, which I think is very freeing. Because that teaches you a lot about how to write and how to run a game and how things not to do. The courage it takes to pick up a random book off the shelf and read it as much as you can or want to, especially when it's these little guys, like you say, like the little ones in the hand. Yeah, it's very, very joyous for me.
I've talked before, maybe on here, but definitely like on socials and stuff, that like I feel weird about the amount of effort it seems like people put into now to never consume bad media.
Yeah,
like the number of like 100 best movies on Netflix, or what are your top 10 movies, the top 10 movies of last year, and all of this, and setting aside like any financial burden part of it, of just like if we assume that you just have equal access to this because hey, libraries are things, like just go read a book, take it off the shelf, flip it over. Does it sound interesting? Check it out, read it. Because if you don't like it, and this is like the point that I work towards, if you don't like it, you understand a little bit more now about what you like in whatever that specific genre is. If you're like, oh, I read this random sci-fi book, what I didn't like? I didn't like this, and it's like, okay, well, you've learned, you understand now. And that I think is when people talk about, the death of media literacy, this is, I think, a part of it that people don't observe. I think people are like, oh yeah, people aren't critically thinking anymore, and it's like, yeah, and it's because I think they don't read anything that they don't like. They don't read something and go, that was bad, here's why, and I understand why, and I understand the themes or whatever.
I think that's true. I think that that's a lot part of it. I also think that people don't have infinite time, and
Yeah.
particularly in what curation is about, and like an ideal of what a review is or what reviewers do, is that you're a communicator, you're a mass communicator, and these top 10 lists, sometimes they're problems in and of themselves. Look at the Oscars and think about the number of things in which like are born of the groundswell, despite like many clear problems or problematic elements of like these things that are being championed. But if you could only watch so many movies or read so many books, and you're like, well, I only got one, what's it going to be? Like, that's a big part of it too, is being like, well, I don't know movies, I haven't watched a movie in a number of times, I have a busy family, or all these other things, right? Like, what if I'm only going to pick one, what it's going to be? And sometimes it's a bad movie, or you're like, apparently this is on all these lists, maybe this is worth my time. And maybe you're wrong, or maybe you don't think critically about it. So I totally hear what you're saying.
Yeah. The caveat with it is just like, hey man, if you know your life, and if the thing that I say sounds stupid, just ignore me then. All right, I gotta hear about this TV series you can't stop thinking about, and then I got my homework, and then we gotta be done.
Yeah, you bet.
I'm all in charge. Graham, we gotta be done.
I know. This is clicking. So I find that in our world of genre fiction, I don't always love all of the things within the genre that are out or are popular or whatever. Part of that's being a writer, and part of that is like being media literate, but also just like it's also taste. It's also just like, some very, very popular shows within our genre fiction stuff. I've been like, nah, I don't think so. Or, the parts of it stood out for me weren't significant. Which is why it was so interesting to me that this show is continuing to stick with me. And that's The Pit. One of the first kind of adult shows that I watched with my parents, being like, what do you guys do at like 9 o'clock at night? they watch a lot of ER, and so I would sit down with them and watch it, and so it's really just about timing, and in terms of like the development of my brain, I have kind of a soft spot for it in terms of how old I was and when I was watching it with my parents and stuff. And I knew that The Pit was the same executive producer, and even an actor who was a young doctor on it is sort of like the elder figure, the teaching figure in this one. He's also a writer on it and has been doing theater in LA for a couple decades. So it is a emergency room, and it's got a time gimmick, was it's a single day, so an hour of television is an hour at the ER. So it's 7 to 8 and 8 to 9 and 9 to 10. Each of these are individual episodes. And so it kind of sounds like 24, which immediately like makes me bristle in terms of like what kind of weird jingoistic propaganda might this be.
I'm gonna stop nodding, but yes, 24.
Keep nodding.
It makes me think of 24.
First, Matt loves 24. He loves
Bush
era politics.
Back when 24 was on TV, I enjoyed watching 24. And then there was a moment where 24 was on TV and I wasn't watching it anymore. And now I have fond memories of that, of the enjoyment that I had.
Of Bush era jingoism. Got it. Where happened to that guy? So all of these media, all shows that are about like emergency room medicine are all about like the chaos and the intensity and like the flawed geniuses of doctors and like whatever. And so that's not really of interest to me, but like the time gimmick's incredible. It's got a large cast. You feel the freneticness, and it doesn't feel synthetic. And as a result, a single patient story takes like their morning, and you get to feel there's morning because there's all these different things. The way it's paced, the way it's written, the number of characters, the way that they get personalized, is just kind of next level. It's like my favorite TV show I've watched certainly all year, and like I'm trying to remember the last one that I liked it as much as this. There's kind of your high watermark things that keep coming out, like The Bear. And I recently watched the new season of The Bear after really hating season 3, but I'm like, oh, maybe it's actually trying to say something. But yeah, I was blown away by how much I liked it. And for me, like, there's nothing wrong about watching like bad media, watching a bad movie or reading something. For me, it's just like it's like popcorn, like you experience it, it goes through you, and then you don't think about it again. But the stuff that like affects me as art and as a experiencer of art are the things that I keep thinking about or stay with me, or that I like keep mulling over in my head. And the stuff that I point to when I want to put it on these top 10 lists and share it with a non-appreciative audience. The
They mean
Pit
me.
is there.
They mean me specifically, not you. They mean me.
Okay, all right. Well, you heard it here first. And so I'm surprised by how much I liked it. But also like it's the point where I'm like, I want more. Do I rewatch it immediately? Yeah. It's like the best TV I've watched all year, and I can't remember the last show I watched that I was like this into it, and connected with it and enjoyed all of the creative decisions that went into its formation.
Do you often rewatch shows?
Sometimes. I don't know about often. I think Star Trek is one that I've rewatched. X-Files is one that I've rewatched. I had a representative, like two sides of a coin, that I realized was Avatar: The Last Airbender and Firefly. Every time I rewatched Firefly, I liked it less and less, and every time I rewatched Avatar, I liked it more and more. And they did that for me. I wouldn't say often, but the ones that are really special, especially if I'm watching them with people or something, like sometimes I'll go back to them like that.
It's really it takes a lot for me to like rewatch anything, and so I'm just yeah, even the stuff
a movie, a TV show.
Yeah, no, like movies are easier because they're inherently shorter time buy-ins.
Right.
But just for whatever reason, I think it stems slightly from and you know, when I was a young adult, when I had depression and 5 DVDs and that was it, you know. You can only watch The Office season 1 so many times in your depression before it changes your mental state.
That's before it got nice. Season 1 is when they were all angry and they were like, "Oh, wait, we need to be nicer. Like we can't just like be acerbic."
Steve Carell needs to be less racist, not no racist, less racist,
but also like have a heart. Like he can be a moron and a boob and incompetent and damaging things, but he needs to have a heart. And you know,
actually,
I was I think the shift.
I actually my hot take with The Office is that if you cut there's 2 different shows, and if you cut it in half, the later half of The Office is better than the front half of The Office, and I think the later half of The Office gets worse when you compare it to the first part. Like you said, like they got nicer and they realized like, oh, this is bad, but it's 2025. We don't have to analyze The Office anymore.
It's 2025. Welcome to the Office podcast. We're here to talk about The Office because it's cool.
So mad at you. I'm so mad at you, but also I think we're best friends. I think that's the side it came down on. I think that's it.
There we go.
I think that's how
it could have been. It could have been either one.
It could have gone. You did yell at me for enjoying Bush era politics, and that was really close.
I didn't so much yell as make sure it was clear to the audience how much you miss it.
I didn't yell so much as point directly at a big sign.
I was like, just make it clear. This is what just happened. It's going to be in the show notes.
I'll find a Vulture article that's like everything that's wrong in 24. That'll be funny. But my homework before we get to the last question. My partner and I have been watching a lot of Korean variety shows on Netflix. If you know, you or the listener are not familiar, Korean variety shows are great. They're like game shows, but if nobody won anything. So
Great.
Yeah, they're like comedies, but also what if sometimes they played games in them? Cool. This is not a variety show, but we just watched Devil's Plan season 1 and 2, which I think is very great and accessible if you like regular game shows. If you want to dip your toes into foreign language television on Netflix, I think Devil's Plan season 1 and 2 are fantastic. They're more traditional layout game shows. If you're familiar with like Survivor or Big Brother, almost exactly the same thing. But a lot more cerebral, a lot more involved. And I love them to death. So Aaron and I have been watching a show called Kane's B&B, which is a show where they got I learned a new word as part of the show, which is manhwaka, which if you are a nerd, you might be familiar with the term mangaka, which is the Japanese term for the person who illustrates a manga. In Korean, those are called manhwas, and thus the word is manhwaka, which was interesting to learn. So he's a writer and illustrator. He's been on variety television for a number of things. For this show, they had him draw and design his own bed and breakfast on an island, and had some celebrities come and staff it, and then had regular people come and be guests. And it has been it has been the source of a lot of laughter, in a very silly way. It's a very silly show, and I think sometimes you need a little silliness. So Kane's B&B, it's been it's been very funny. It's very good. He doesn't try very hard at the B&B. I think that's enjoyable. Now that we're through homework, somebody asked me once, they're like, "What's your homework?" And I had a stress, and I realized I should also do that, but it was Blueprints twice. If you want to know how bad that's been, it was my 2 different times I said, "Hey, play Blueprints." So this is the 3 question. This is the last question.
Great.
Don't say great that strongly.
Great.
You were like, great. I'm so
great.
I'm so done. So this is the final question. The first episode I did, I asked my first guest, the Amazing Star, who the top 3 people she would have on her podcast were. And ever since then, I've asked the guest some iteration of top 3, whatever, and I come up with it during the episode. So even I don't know what it's going to be when we start.
Hell yeah.
I wrote this down. I probably could have come up with a sillier one, but I liked this one, so I wrote this down. Graham, what are the top 3 games, as open as you want it to be, top 3 games that you think Quinns should review on YouTube?
All of mine.
I'll accept that.
It's such an interesting question because, like, I got very familiar with their writing style and their partners because I was mainlining Shut Up Sit Down videos very early on in, like, board game facilitator career. Although RPGs have, like, always been my, like, absolute happy place. I have plenty of board games because of the libraries that are broken down. I love teaching and sharing them with people, so that's very similar to the way that I like write and design games. Because I want it's asking them to humor me, and I'm gonna show you this thing. What's interesting about what Quentin Smith's effect is that it's become this huge mouthpiece, and, like, there's really no other person that seems to have the kind of audience and effect that his writing does. And he seems very aware of that. And so in these, like, short seasons, it's a matter of, like, what is going to be propelled into the limelight. It's not just, like, what needs more attention or what is. Like, what is doing a thing and deserves to be this, like, overnight success. And so there's kind of 2 ways for me to think about it. One is the idea of, like, me being a human being in this community, in this space, and, like, the way I see these waves being made and how I'm very, very conscious of that. And the other one, which is much easier for me to answer, which is it's very hard to promote your own work, but it's wonderful to promote the work of your friends, because no one likes talking about their work, because most people are awkward nerds. And so as a result, like, I am very comfortable being, like, that person that says, hey, have you ever seen this game? It's great. Which is true, but also it's of my friend that doesn't like talking about it. So, game number 1 is Bug Dish by the one true Ryan Kahn. Ryan did the layout in Under the Atom Strangely. It is a game designer and a dear friend, cultural consultant for the Wild Sea and many other things. He's also a game designer. And Bug Dish is the game, which is you are bug chefs. That I think really gets to the core of why people like a lot of this sort of, like, Mouse Ritter kind of feel. The, like, where are humans, but the detritus is still here, but we're cute because we're small stuff. And also my constant desire to kind of break people out of the natural assumption that, like, violence is the only, like, or an assumed form of conflict resolution, especially in, like, scene design. So it doesn't have to be horny kissing games, and it doesn't have to be, like, making the hit points go 0. Like, the design space is so huge. And so there's been a few different versions of Bug Dish that have come out, one of which is an amuse bouche. Great pun, Ryan. And when I've run it, I do it like Iron Chef. But Ryan imagines it like a traveling cooking show. Like, you have a little food truck for the bugs going around this lake. I think it's fantastic, and have enjoyed every form of it. Let's see. I wish I remembered the name of it. But one of my favorite games that I backed and just got a zine for was it was about you are a cloned, resurrected Tasmanian tiger. And your aspects of its brain, and you're breaking out of the lab. One of my first early designs was called In the Tank, where players are the concepts within a colony of algae trying to become sentient and trying to stave off death. And as a kid who fixated on, like, invasive species and human-caused extinctions, this is both philosophical and cool and weird. Golly, I wish I could remember the game. Hopefully you're mad Googling it as I'm wasting time.
I was gonna say, it was like,
and
do you
it'll
want
go
me
in
to...
the show notes. Growing Thassaline is what it's called. I hope I'm saying Thassaline right. I'm not entirely sure. It's like the proper name of the Tasmanian tiger.
I believe that it's correct, and my source is my wife is a science nerd.
Great. I'm also a science nerd, and my dad was a zoo vet, and so as a young child, I have vivid memories of watching that black and white video of the Thessaline, like walking back and forth, always labeled with the last known living Tasmanian tiger before it was all killed off by colonialists. My favorite games, my like watershed games, I feel like have a significant amount of attention,
Mm.
which is Fiasco, Microscope, and Dread.
Mm.
But then I like feel like I'm outside the bubble. So I'm like, of course everyone's heard of these games, but it's like not always the case. So I feel like it's always valuable to talk about them. Each of those games individually changed my life, taught me more about design, taught me more about running games. So I'll squeeze them all in at number 3 as your like my trifecta of games that each individually won. I think about my experience not just as a human, which is definitely true, not just as a designer, but like fundamentally how I was like building my worldview and my idea of like what was possible with these games and what they meant. And so Fiasco number 1, and number 2 Microscope, which I still think about all the time, and Dread, which I love horror. I love horror movies, and I love horror as a genre. And it's not just the metaphor of the Jenga tower, which is very, very interesting and clever. But character creation in that game is brilliant. The whole bottom of the book is strips of little questions, open-ended questions, and you answer them and define your character that way. And so what I've done in the past is I've like thrown them all into a hat and you pull out 3 or 4 and then you write the answers, and that's how you do character creation. Each of these games, I think, represented to me like you're freeing yourself from expectations of like you need dice and you need a character sheet and you need ability scores which simulate a certain thing which allow you to interact with the fiction or create the fiction. And all of those games meant something to me very, very important. So, if Jason Morningstar or Ben Robbins or Epi get a little more play for their awesome games, like Quinn's, go get them. Go get them, Quinn's.
It's funny you hit at the beginning. And I know I think you've one more, I think. I wasn't keeping count. I generally don't.
I said 5. I squeezed.
You did. You did technically say 5.
And then I squeezed a personal 3 into the third.
The thing I always say is it's top 3, but if you say as many as you want. I think you hit on my kind of part of my feeling with Quinn's. To get it out of the way, obviously I respect Quinn's. I love Quinn's. I've been watching Shut Up and Sit Down for forever. I've watched people make games for forever. Quinn's Quest is great, but I think you hit on the thing that I've also kind of come to with Quinn's Quest specifically, which is anything that he reviews is going to immediately be incredibly popular. And I'm sure y'all saw that with Wild Sea when he did that, and we saw that with Mythic Bastion Land right before Gen Con. And we see that with literally every game that he does. And there's almost the responsibility, and I almost want to ask him about it because I would love to know what his thoughts are, because it's the thing where you never want to put intention to someone when you can't say for certain why, right? Unlike previously where I said Graham thinks Pathfinder sucks. That's fine. Where, I wonder how he picks the games, how he decides what he's going to do. And I love that he like actively plays a campaign of it before doing the review. Like that he's really gotten in depth on this game and understands what he's saying. But I also wonder like what responsibility he feels, and I think he's talked about this a little bit, like to the community, to highlight different things, to highlight different voices, to highlight, I said to somebody where I'm like, he has not reviewed a game that I didn't already know about. But is that a problem, or is that because I'm in the inside bubble of the TTRPG community? Is that because I'm so clued in that it's like, oh, of course I know about these games, and is that a problem? Like you said, it would not be a problem if more people knew about Fiasco. It would not be a problem if all of a sudden tomorrow everybody was talking about Dread. That would not be a bad thing. And so I do wonder, and I'm curious, you know, how he thinks about that, how he structures these things.
Well, you hit on another big point of mine about the way Quinn's writes, and I think this has been for a long time. Is he loves to stick his flag in things, and I think unfortunately, a lot of the times, it becomes very, very surface level. When he was talking about like wargaming at a certain point, he had some very odd takes that really just kind of had to do it like not really understanding what the source was. And now that it's in RPGs, a lot of the time some of his analysis doesn't always hit in the right way that it should. And his thoughts, I feel like, come from, you talk about the full campaign, but I just don't know that a lot of the insights are really doing the job. Really, it's about the platform that is being created, and it's funny and it's entertaining and it's interesting, and they know how to make a video. Like in the middle of the Slug Blaster review, he decided to make an aside where he said people who play, run, and evangelize role-playing games are shit at telling stories. That was his exact words. And you know, I think it says that he's shit at telling stories is like what more it is. And is not reflective of the community, the games, and it's not the first time that he's done that. And I think that is a result of Bubbles and where he has been in the communities that he exists in. And I think by and large, because the TTRPG world is so niche, in terms of the money and the people and the eyes, like with all of the caveats, like having any kind of discourse flowing is good because of the end result. But I think there's a lot of issues that come along with taking these words at face value and the ways that he thinks and the ways he decides to communicate them.
That's, yeah, I agree with that. It is a thing that I felt very uncertain about when he started doing Quinn's Quest, because I know what this is gonna sound more negative than I mean it to be, but I've seen what happens with, like, in the board game space with Shut Up and Sit Down, where he'll review a game and everybody will buy it, and then they don't engage with it, or they think it's this other thing and whatever. And then it feels like there is a section of that audience that just wants to have the cool thing, and is just
sure, like
we talked about earlier, like the top 10 movies coming to Netflix, and they just watch those movies because those are the top 10 movies coming to Netflix, as opposed to taking his reviews as almost a primer of like, ooh, look at this cool thing. Right. And then you look at the cool thing and you understand what you like about the cool thing. And then you can take that on and then take that as a lens to view his other reviews, or view other people's reviews or other people's stuff. And it's tricky. It's hey, we're deep enough in this. Hot take, he should review more works by queer people and women.
He should. And people who aren't British.
Yeah.
And and more people of color.
Yeah, I would. And this is the thing where I said this to someone. I was like, I would love it if Quinn's didn't review a game by a white guy for like a year and a half. You just take them, you just cut and just do it. Because like we talked about, there's the intentionality with his focus, and the intentionality that he knows him talking about it is going to bring. I think it's a delicate balance when you have an audience like that to do that sort of thing responsibly. And I don't want to use the word ethically. That's not the right word at all. But like I said, understand what that means, understand what that attention is going to bring and what it means. And in the way that I said, I don't want to ascribe intention where I don't have any context for. there is a point where it's like, another game by a white guy. Okay, cool. Another,
Yeah, if for me it's less about intention, and again, it's media literacy, it's critical thinking about the text and what is being said and how it's being said. And the two things I point to, because I also was around for all the shut upside down stuff and the videos and the results, and what I think is interesting about your top 10 movie example is that the difference between a movie is it's experiential and a board game is something you possess. And that is part of the acquisition of like the new coolness and all these things that like that is such a huge part of what drives the economics of the industry. And in terms of what their whole thing is and the way it complicates their space, there's two videos that I think did that for me that you can put in the show notes if this is interesting, and this is not all going to end up on the cutting room floor. One is their video of and the subsequent backlash to Blood on the Clock Tower. It was so weird. And
I actually didn't watch that one. That's interesting.
The way they came for it and then the way people reacted, it really put me at odds at how they've decided to place themselves and where they were changing, because of course everyone is. And the second one, I think, really put the nails in after also like having a different relationship with them, having run the mega games at Chuck's. I interacted with them all like each year and they never remembered me, which, perhaps I'm biased. I'm putting that out there to be transparent. There is a video that Quinn's does with ex-pastor board game reviewer daddy Tom Vassell.
I didn't know about this.
They basically square off about their like hot takes and opinions, particularly about the ones that each other's have. And Quinn's folds basically every time, which is so funny because I don't always agree with Tom Vassell, but when he was by himself, a lot of his thoughts and opinions about things I thought were very valuable. More to your point of, this is what you think, this is going to inform, like, this is what I think, and this is like another thing, and less like this is scripture, ironically, considering like
the comparison.
How, their whole subculture are all very very Christian people, which like board games. Of course there's a tons of Christians who play board games. Like, it's good, clean fun. It makes a lot of sense to me. So yeah, those two videos I think in particular really complicate all of this. And part of it was also the weird reaction and backlash to the Blood on the Clock Tower video. And then just an odd Zoom call between two reviewers and all the stuff that I took away from it. So,
that's interesting. I didn't know about the Tom Vassell video at all, and I didn't intentionally not watch the Blood on the Clock Tower video. I just saw it and was like, I'm not interested in this, Yeah.
And
so that's interesting. I missed that whole thing.
It was totally so different. And I'm going to be honest, it made me very uncomfortable. And that's just me. It's just a personal reaction. There was just something very off-putting about it. And people said so. People talked about it and was like, what are you guys doing? This is really odd. So, yeah.
Yeah, those... That shouts to me doing the show notes. Good job, me. You're working hard. Good job, him. This is for me later. Just a little pick me up, little attaboy. Thank you for sitting through all of Graham's slings and arrows where he said I was cool. You did a good job. It's the end of the podcast. Sometimes we get to the end. And I'm like, that was a good conversation. We had a good time. That was a good podcast. And then sometimes we get to the end, and this is one of those where I'm just like, do I just talk to Graham forever? Is this my life? Is this
sure? Like I said, 3 to 5 is so low, right? Like, we could talk about anything.
Graham said I have a lot, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not against it, but but Graham, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it. Listen, I said we're best friends. I said we were going to be best friends or rivals by the end of it. I think we're best friends. And here we are. I think we did it.
And we know where it landed.
I think we're great. You know what made us best friends is both of us think Tom Vassell's a weenie. I'll say that.
A little bit of a weenie. It's so funny because my this whole world of the board gaming and like my being like in the bubble it's non-transferable to the world I am in now as a designer and as a MythWorks person and like all this RPG stuff. And so I was always a person with like many feet in many worlds.
Mhm.
And it's so fascinating to me that like nobody knows Shut Up and Sit Down. Nobody knows any of these people. But Tom's always there. There was always like a big Dice Tower presence at all these cons. And I've had people independently who have no fucking clue who these people are come up to me and be like, that guy really creeped me out. And I look over, I'm like, Tom Vassell? And they're like, yeah. They're like, you don't know who Tom Vassell is? And they're like, no, he really gave you a vibe. I'm like, fascinating. Like, anyways.
The story I always tell, I haven't told it. I don't think I've told it on the podcast. The story I always tell. We used to live in Florida. We went to we went to a number of Dice Tower cons. We actually went for our honeymoon to the first Dice Tower convention. That shows you how big we're big old nerds. It was Dice Tower 2 or 3. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. It was the first day of the con, first game of the con. We're sitting down. We're gonna learn Marvel Legendary. Somebody's offering to teach Marvel Legendary, and we're like, this is great. I wanted to try this. So somebody's teaching it. It's the person teaching it. It's me. It's my wife. It's 3 other people on the side of the table.
You're really painting an era. You're really painting a
Right,
board game
yeah,
era
if you-
for me, and I'm all for it.
And we're so excited. And you know, it's the first day, so everybody's excited. Everybody's getting games and sitting down in this hotel in Florida, and it's amazing. And Tom comes walking down the aisle, and we're like, "Hey, Tom, how are you? How's it going? Good morning." And he goes, "Oh, Marvel Legendary, huh?" And we're like, "Yeah, it's our first time. We're really excited." And he goes, "I hate it with 6," and walks away. That's the funniest interaction I could imagine.
Oh man, that's a cautionary tale. I don't know. There's not a better button for our conversation about games and people and personalities community than that.
It's one of those things where I knew at the moment. I was like, I'm gonna tell this story a lot. But Graham, thank you so much for being on. Everything for Graham will be in the show notes. You can go find their socials, their games. Like I said, go buy Under Arm Strangely. I almost said Quarterly again. What is wrong with me? It's a great game. You should buy it. You should read it. You should enjoy it. And if you are able, you should play it. I think we could probably have a whole conversation about reading versus playing TTRPGs and all of that. But I think it is a fantastic text to read, and I also strongly encourage you to play it because I think it is a very, very interesting game in play. I think it is the, I don't want to say it is the most role-playing game, but it is very focused on playing a role.
But you can don't let me stop you.
In a very, very interesting way. And I love any game that says explicitly, you be creepy. You get to be the creepy one. And that's fun. In the actual play, the character explains it, and the terror player is the one that's like, me, I want to be that one. And that has turned out to be 100% true. Every time I facilitate the game and teach it, one person immediately is like, yes, that one. And I love those players. Yeah, I respect it. I can think of a number of people who would do that, and I love that the game calls it out and says directly. I love it. But no, again, Graham, thank you for being on. It was wonderful. We're best friends.
Thank you. Yeah. Best.
Now it feels like he's messing with me. Do you feel like that?
I don't know, audience.
I don't know.
If I was, would it be cool?
Okay. All right, we have to end this. All right. Say bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
And that's the podcast. I want to thank Graham so much for sitting down and doing the interview with me. If all of this sounded exciting to you and you want to check out CBR+PNK or SCIRE or what a mega game at a con can look like, I've seen MythWorks and Graham and Ray talk about. It is being run at PAX Unplugged coming up. I would love to have Graham on the podcast again to talk about some of his other games, his other stuff. I know I've mentioned it before. I'm in a weird sort of middle point after a year of episodes of the podcast. I don't have any problem featuring works that are coming to crowdfunder to help raise awareness, help get people excited about it, let them know that they can pick this up in physical, what they might be interested in. But But there's more going on in the scene than just this game is on crowdfunding and you should spend your money on it. Having that focus limits me from talking to more people about their actual play shows or their weird one-shot zines or really any other project outside of TTRPGs. I've said before, I'm so excited for the niche and the reach that I've been able to get in the TTRPG community, but it wasn't intended to be my focus. And I do still want to have all kinds of people on the podcast to talk about what they're doing. But that's enough inside baseball. All the links to Graham's stuff will be in the show notes as always. I highly recommend you check out Unearned Autumn Strangely. Check out CBR+PNK. It is one of my favorite games going. And if you're going to PAX Unplugged, make sure to check out the schedule. Sign up for SCIRE if you can. See if there's other mega games going on. I think one of the driving ethos of this show is to try to get people excited for stuff outside of their wheelhouse, get people to branch out, try new things, try new ideas, try new games, try new whatever. So if you go to PAX Unplugged, sign up for something that sounds a little weird, a little outside your wheelhouse, a little outside your tastes. See what happens. You might like it. If you want more from the show, you can find us on Patreon. Free members get video versions to the interviews, so you don't have to deal with YouTube ads or any weird age verification nonsense. And supporters at any tier get access to the ad-free podcast feed. Now, does the podcast feed have ads now? No. Might it in the future? Probably. But supported on Patreon means you don't have to deal with any of that. You also get access to small behind-the-scenes funny outtake clips, little things that get cut out of the podcast for continuity's sake, but are funny little bits to show off to y'all. And as always, I got to shout out the homies over at +1EXP. If you're going to PAX Unplugged, also check them out. They are a purveyor of some fantastic independent TTRPGs. And it's not just stuff on the store. They run crowdfunders all the time. They help people get their games made, get them in the hands of people. They're out here doing the damn work in a way that you got to respect. If you want to support their efforts, you can go to +1exp.com. You can get subscribed to the RPG Zine Club and get some incredible games delivered to your mailbox or your inbox every month. You can pick up fantastic games like Chain X Linked, Exquisite Biome, Moonlight on Rosevale Beach. Just go poke around. You'll find something incredible. When you're checking out, use code WDPodcast for 10% off your order or 10% off your Zine Club membership. Thank you so much to them for setting that up. And again, if you go to PAX Unplugged, check them out. Tell them I sent you. But all right, that's enough out of me. There's a new Pokemon game out, so I'm going to go play some of that. So hope wherever you are, you're happy, healthy, you're safe, and I'll see you in the next one.